Welcome to Cultivate, a Veritas Academy podcast, where we explore truth, beauty, and goodness through meaningful conversation. We invite you to join us in discussions meant to edify your mind, encourage your heart, and equip your family to live abundantly in Christ.
Welcome back to Cultivate. I'm your host, Ty Fischer, the head of school here at Veritas Academy, and today we're going to have a conversation about a topic that many parents think about a lot, and that is preparing their kids for college. I have with us our director of counseling, our college counselor, Rachel Kiehl, and Rachel does a tremendous job working with our students to find what is the right next step for them. Now, as Rachel and I were coming toward this conversation, it's a pretty complicated conversation because what we're going to talk about are kind of some things that are generalities, that are good practices, with the recognition that those good practices are not necessarily the right step for every student, okay? So as we talk, there's going to be some things that will be more individually pointed and some things that will be more general. So, Rachel, thank you for coming in and having this conversation.
I'm really honored to be here.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Wow.
I think of all the people you've had on this podcast and everyone I listened to the whole last season, I've thought, how can that one be topped? And then the next person is amazing too. So I don't know if I can live up to that.
Oh, I bet
They've been great.
Yeah, I got confidence in you.
Thank you.
So before we get started, tell us a little bit just about what you do here at Veritas, especially as it relates to preparing students for that next step.
Sure. My goal in my work here is to help students think about how God created them, what things they can do that other students can't do, or basically, what are their gifts? What are their strengths? And then how should they use those? So we have a program, you could say, a curriculum that I repeat every year. It's going to look different with every student, but we follow the same pattern with 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th with a series of classroom presentations, individual meetings with students and parents, and I even do a college seminar class with juniors that we'll probably talk about a little bit in the podcast too. Okay.
So first things first, college, one of the things that parents think about a lot is the cost of college. Mm-hmm. So in a general sense, when should parents start saving for college?
The sooner the better.
Like the child has to actually be born though, right?
Right, exactly. So when you get in the car and you're heading home from Women and Babies, pull up your phone, open that account. I don't care how you're feeling. No.
Well, actually, that would
you don't have to do it on the way home from the hospital.
That would be a good place for the husband to step in, right?
Exactly. If he's wondering, how can I help? What should I do?
Open the 529.
Start the 529. Exactly. Get busy. Put some money in it. Ask grandparents to send a check over, and you'll put it where it needs to go. Yeah, the sooner the better. We can date ourselves very quickly by talking about how inexpensive college used to be compared to how it is now. It's crazy. Yeah. It's really crazy when you see these numbers and you think, who can afford that? And is it worth it?
Yeah.
Are those expensive degrees worth that much money?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's so expensive. So the sooner you can start, and I'm seeing this, you've seen this, Ty, but it feels like you blink and your kids are ready to start visiting colleges.
That is the case.
It is.
So we're down to one at home now, and it's both fun and interesting, but I tell parents, just enjoy.
Yeah.
Just enjoy because it's going to be this thing that seems endless is going to be done quicker than you think.
It is. And those early years with the little ones, the days seem so long, and you think, when are they going to start school? Like,
will diapers ever not be like a line in our budget?
Exactly. It's exhausting. And then they start school, and you look back and you're like, oh my goodness, where did time go? Like, school starts and the years just fly.
Yeah.
So it's with the savings, I think like, wow, my oldest is going into 7th grade this year, and the time has gone by so quickly that if you don't start sooner, you kind of have this panic moment of, whoa, I only have this many years left to save.
Yeah.
So I know some parents are in a position where they would say, I just don't know if I can set any money aside. And I resonate with that. It's hard. But setting up the 529 is so easy. It's something you can do on your own. It's not like you need to call a professional to help you.
Mm-hmm.
You can use an investment platform, or you can go on pa529.com and just sign up and connect your bank account and just make that a budget item that money gets automatically deducted every paycheck or every month. Even if it's just that goes out every 2 weeks into that account. That's something that will grow. And if you wait till later, that's okay. We'll talk about, there's plenty of other options ways to get the cost of college down. But it's nice to know that you have something saved that can help. Every little bit helps.
Yeah.
So, sooner the better.
A friend of ours, Mike Stoltzfus, actually wrote an article for us a while back. This was a number of years ago, but it was an encouragement. It was when the 529 laws changed so that 529 can actually be used for private education, K to 12. And I think there's a change coming up that you're going to mention, right?
Yeah. So one thing I know some parents would say, well, what if they don't end up going to college and I put all this money in a 529 and then there's rules about how I can get it back and penalties and things like that. But a law was passed that starting in 2024, up to $35,000 unused from a 529 can be rolled into a Roth IRA for your child. So
that's another incentive.
It is.
Because
it is.
a child starting out with a $35,000 Roth IRA at 20 years old.
Exactly. Think what that's going to grow to. And the other thing is, here, many of our parents, all of our students are the most special students out there, right?
Mine are.
So they're all going to get full rides, and we won't need the 529. So what do we do?
I've thought about that and then had not to think about it as much. But you can transfer the money around too.
Exactly.
So, if you have that child that gets the football scholarship to Alabama, we've never had one of those
Not
before.
yet.
We've had full scholarships to Alabama. They just haven't been football scholarships.
Right. That's okay.
I don't know. Maybe Brian would think of his as a football fan scholarship. Right. But even if that happens, you could transfer that money in theory to a 529 that could help you do a master's degree.
Exactly. Maybe I want to get a PhD when all these kids are out of the house. Like, I'll
have
take
a little
that
bit more
money.
time, right?
Yeah.
Or transfer it to a grandchild, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Well, and
there's a lot of flexibility.
What Mike pointed out was this is a real time when grandparents can be a blessing because we did a little bit of math and if a grandparent, this is in theory, I know for most grandparents it's not an option, but for some it is. If they drop $11,000 in a 529 every year until the child is 6 years old in kindergarten, it's going to do a lot to fund a private education at a school like Veritas, and then there's going to be a bunch of money left over at the end. So
because we started early.
Yeah, so that's a good word to sit down and think through the resources that you have. And if you're a grandparent listening and can be a blessing in that way, that's really powerful.
Absolutely.
It can be really powerful. So college is just a step in finding God's calling for one's life. How would you encourage parents and students to get a sense of that calling? We've done a few podcasts on this about sensing calling and, around our dinner table. I have 4 daughters, so I mainly listen around the dinner table. But some of the funniest conversations are when they come home after you've run through this computer program. And, it says what it just gives them an idea of what their calling could be and what the average income is for that. And we had one daughter that recommended that she become a doctor, but it was a doctor of some interesting things, and everybody kind of giggled at that. And then one of our daughters, it came up poet therapist. Poet therapist. And then, we kind of thought through what a poet therapist was, and we said, oh, yeah, that kind of works.
I've never even heard of that.
No. But then the two incomes were revealed, and the doctor makes a little more than the poet therapist.
That's really funny.
Yeah.
Yeah, I knew you were going to go that way, because parents they'll seek me out. They'll see me at a school event and say, like, what was that test? Because my student came home and said they're supposed to be a whatever. And then so the next year I always go in and accuse the students who have not yet taken the test. And I say, don't pick the craziest thing that comes up in your list and go home and tell your mom and dad.
That's what my kids do.
That's what they all do. And they talk about it for like 2 days with their friends. What did you get? I got this. And they laugh about the most ridiculous ones. So I always explain to them there's a science behind this. And yes, you can manipulate the kind of results you get. That's very easy to do. I don't know why you'd want to if we're really trying to figure out what your calling might be. But students do have a lot of fun taking that interest inventory. So backing up, I just am always trying to remind students that they are unique, and the things they can do as they look around their classroom and they look at what other people are good at and what they're good at. They're all different, and they all interact differently. They all react to things differently, and all of those things shape what they might be good at and how they might live out their calling. One of the first things we talk about in the junior year college seminar is the importance of being in God's Word. If you really are seeking to live a life that glorifies God, and that's ultimately our purpose, that we're going to glorify God and enjoy Him forever.
I've heard of that before.
Yeah, you might have. So that's what we're always coming back to, is how can I glorify God, and how did He make me, and what am I good at? So we talk about some different scriptures, and Psalm 119, 105 is one of my favorites. Your word is a lamp unto my feet and a light unto my path. And we talk about you need to be in God's Word, and if you're not, there are so many ideas out there and so many ways you can be swayed, things that you start to value that maybe those are not things the Lord values.
That's so consistent with what we really want kids to value in a classical education, in a classical Christian education, is that it's not, you're going to live in a world that is full of change, but there has to be that permanent thing that you can that can give you guidance about how to work through all of this change going on around you. Yes. Wow, that's really insightful.
Yes.
Now, parents are in a tough situation right now, and the toughness of it is when I went to college, and I think you and I are alums of the same college, Grove City College, and high five. So when I went to college, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I discovered what I wanted to do in college.
Yes, same.
I was risking much less. So how do you help parents and students find the college that's a good fit for them at the right price? Because I find, and I understand now, there's some kids that are going to figure it out when they're in college. And that's tough because now that investment is much higher than when I was in school. So how do you help them find the right college at the right price?
I am a big fan of net price calculators, and all our Veritas parents probably get tired of hearing me say this over and over, but it's what I always start with. Before you get obsessed with a certain school, or your student says, I want to apply to these 5 colleges, run your net price calculator, because there's 2 methods by which colleges distribute aid. One is the need-based, and the other is merit-based. And a lot of those name brand prestigious colleges that your student might be excited about could be a very expensive investment for you. It all depends on your income level and how much savings you have. So when you run the calculator, you will start to get a picture of what kind of aid package you might get from
Yeah.
that school.
Yeah.
Some students who are from a higher income family will get a much better deal going to a school like Penn State or Grove City or one of the many Christian colleges that give merit scholarships.
Yeah.
They might come in at $20,000 to $30,000 a year, whereas based on income, they're going to be the ones paying full price at those name brand
Yes.
Ivy League and prestigious schools. They could get a package that says, we're going to give you $2,000. So you are going to pay $83,000 instead of $85,000. And some parents say, that's fine. That's great. We've saved for this. We have this money.
Well, and with some majors, you might know my income level at the end of this is going to
True.
be high.
That's true.
Poet
Yes.
therapist
Yes.
is not. That's not. If you're out there and you're planning on becoming a poet therapist, you need to think carefully about the price of college.
Yeah. So some parents say that's fine. That's what it costs. We have that money. And others might say, you know what? Like my student might go to grad school. They might go to med school. They might want to be a lawyer. Let's find something lower cost, even though we think they'd be a competitive candidate at one of those Ivy League schools. Let's find something that's less expensive, and then we'll have money for grad school, or we'll have that Roth IRA. And so that's something each family needs to kind of figure out. But the net price calculators are a great way to just get a picture. I run them even now with young kids. Like, if we had this financial scenario, what would we be looking at paying?
So now we know what Rachel Kiehl does with her spare, her leisure time
I
at
just
home.
sit there and calculate.
Just run the price calculator on Hugh, right?
Exactly. If Hugh gets this score on his SAT, what will we pay? Because the calculators for schools that
Now,
award.
how old is Hugh? Just so that our he's 2 years old.
Yeah.
Okay.
So schools that do offer merit aid do have that built into their calculators. So you can play around with it and say, if they get a $1,500, how much money are they going to get? And then reset the calculator and say, okay, if it's a $1,200, what do they get? How much money? What's the difference? And then you can just kind of like be aware.
Yeah.
Awareness is what we're all about. Like, just
so
don't go into this blindly.
So, there are board games and stuff like that. I mean, we could, if you're just sitting around doing the price calculator all the time, I probably need to help you like broaden your life a little bit.
No, don't obsess over the price calculators. But if you're sitting there listening and saying, what would it cost to go to Princeton? You can find out, because a lot of parents don't know about them. And then they come in saying like, we think we'll get financial aid. And I'm like, really? Do you know?
Yeah.
No, but we hear there's financial aid. That's a very nebulous idea. You may get great financial aid. You might not.
Well,
it depends on where you are. Yeah, all those factors.
And what's been interesting, it's more complicated than that even, because if you are a very high income family, some of those prestigious schools are gonna you're gonna pay full freight unless there's some kind of merit scholarship or something like that.
Yeah, and they don't give them. So.
Well, because everyone that goes to Princeton has a 4.0.
Exactly.
And everyone that goes to Princeton has a 1,500 SAT score. How special. There's no 1,700 SAT scores.
Nope, you can't beat that.
But what was interesting is if you're not of a higher income level, sometimes those prestigious schools are the lowest price schools.
Yes.
So
if you make less than $65,000 a year as a family, it's a free ride at Princeton. So those schools, they have great financial aid, and some families say, "Oh, I don't know if we'll apply. We think we're probably high income." You might not be as high as somebody else is. I think we're using Princeton as an example over and over, but I think you could make up to $200,000 a year and still get some grants from Princeton.
Yeah.
So you just don't know until you run the calculator.
Well, and that's one of the things that you help families kind of discover, right?
Yes. And I love when I find a situation with a student who maybe they've struggled financially and they don't have the savings, and I look at their grades and their scores and I say, hey, you could have some really great financial opportunities, and I think you'd be a great candidate at some of these quote prestigious schools. And then we get
If
into
you're
all
the
the
right-
other things.
if you're the right-
If you're called to be at one of those schools. So, and there are a lot of other ways too. If let's say again that you haven't been able to save and you don't have a really strong income, there's so many ways. If you have kind of an open mind to hearing about different opportunities, there are a lot of ways you can cut the cost on your college expenses.
So what about sometimes you'll have students that say, I'm going to take a gap year. What do you think about gap years?
I think it depends on the student. Sometimes I think I'd like a gap year. Would you like a gap year? Doesn't that sound like I'm just going to take a gap year?
Well, so like I'm 28 years into this job. So but by Christian calculations, I should have 4 years of sabbatical.
I think
now.
so. Sabbatical. I guess that's what we call it as adults. Like sabbatical sounds awesome. So I think for some students, it's a great idea. You think, you follow this path of like you do all this schooling and then you go off to college and you get a job and life just moves on. It's kind of a neat idea to take a whole year and do mission work or travel. Like think of if you have a family member living somewhere else, like just go have a different experience. The other thing I think about neuroscience has shown in recent years the process of the development of the prefrontal cortex, which is responsible for rational thought. And so I think, 1 more year for that prefrontal cortex to develop, that can't hurt
Emily
in
says that
decision-making.
mine's still developing.
Well, you'll get there one day.
She's doubtful.
Yeah, maybe not. But yeah, it just depends on the student. Some students are ready to go and they're going to have a great experience that next year and they'll fly through for 4 years. Other students just maybe they're not ready for the commitment and the investment. The one thing I would say, I really advise students and parents to stop and think about it. If the reason behind a gap year is I just don't have my life figured out, like you mentioned that when you went to college, the ball kind of got rolling and you figured out your purpose and your calling. Sitting around at home and saying, I'm just going to get a retail job and just wait for that magic moment to come where I figure out my life. I think you need to be more proactive than that and take some steps to think about what that next year will look like. Don't just put your life on hold because you just don't know what to major in and if money is the reason, some students actually could really throw off their whole financial aid package if they spend a whole year. Let's say they make $30,000 in a year. That might disqualify them from the financial aid they would have had if they had just started college.
Yeah. So when I hear about students taking a gap year and they say like I'm going to save up money, that's one of the ones that I usually say like have something that you're going to do.
Yes.
Like invest in your capacity.
Yeah.
Because that's going to be so important in the long run. So, we've had students that we have a student next year who graduated this last year, Anna Nichols, who is going to be doing stuff with YWAM over in South Asia for a year. She's already got her acceptance at the Templeton Honors College at Eastern. Yeah. And I thought, when she told me what she was doing, I was like, wow, that sounds great. But then there's sometimes when there are students that are thinking about a gap year and really they're like, I just want to earn money for college. And I'm like, that might not be a great idea.
Yeah.
And the other side of it is I was able to make it through college and grad school because I didn't know how to spend money. We were so poor.
Yeah.
But we didn't know that we were poor.
Right.
I mean, you can only eat raviolios and ramen noodles for so long. But if you get used to eating, steak, you're not. It's harder to go. It's harder to go back.
That's true. Yeah. I also think many of the colleges our students end up selecting do career support and advice so well that just saying I'm going to choose this really supportive college community where I know I'll be helped and I know I'll be mentored could be a better move, because as you grow and develop and start to know more about what you're excited about academically, you can then turn to some of those people on the college staff and and receive guidance, get office hours with faculty, go to the career services office and have some of those people talk with you about what could be next for you, or try an internship in this area, or we have this alumni connection with these people and why don't you talk to them? So I think rather than feeling frozen and stuck, sometimes if you have the academic abilities and the financial aid package looks like something you can do, then just going ahead and taking that leap could actually be more helpful.
Yeah. So I think what you're saying, Rachel, I could summarize is, if you feel frozen, let it go.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Well, so college is not necessarily the right next step for every student. And living here in Lancaster County, Lancaster it's an odd place in so many good ways.
Yeah.
You know, we've had students before, and I'm like, well, where are you going to go to college? And the student says, I'm not planning on going to college. And I'm like, oh, you're really bright, come on. And they say, I'm just going to take over one of Dad's businesses. And I'm like, well, that is also a good plan.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Now, what I've seen here at Veritas is a change probably over the last 20 years. 20 years ago, almost all of our students applied to colleges. The one that was the best, that they liked the best, that's the one they chose, and they just went to college. That has become a lot more, parents have had to learn skills to become more aggressive, like to think through, because there's so much more money on the line.
Yeah.
But as a school, our goals are still the same. The vast majority of our students end up going to college in some form or fashion. But we understand that there are going to be some that don't, that's not the step that God would have them to take. Our job as a school, though, is to have them prepared to be ready to go to college or whatever that next step is. And if we don't do that, that's on us. That's not every student that graduates from Veritas Academy should be able to go on to college if that would be the right next step for them. So how do you, when parents are analyzing that, how do you know what's a good sign that maybe God might be calling a student not to go on to college? We had a podcast, might be in this season, I don't know if it'll air before or after this, with two of our alums who actually chose not to go to college. They went straight into a career, and it was a good fit for them.
Yeah.
So
I'm excited to hear that one.
Okay. So how do you know what advice would you give to parents whose children are thinking, there's a path that I want to follow that doesn't head toward going to a 4-year university?
Well, I think with everything involved in these decisions and this whole discussion, I encourage parents to just really listen to your child and really hear them out. If they have an idea that's completely foreign to you, it might be easy to laugh it off or to write it off, but I would encourage you to really listen to them and ask them if they've done their research, and maybe even offer and say, hey, if we know this person in our family or in our church who does something like that, why don't we set up a meeting for you to talk with that person and see where this could go? So I think it's important to listen to that and to, again, really think about your students' giftings and their strengths and pay attention to that. As a counselor, I love using assessments. We had a good laugh about the interest inventory that I have all our 9th and 10th graders take. And that's really just an introduction to getting them to think about how interests relate to the world of work. So it's just kind of a fun thing. But when they get to their junior year, regardless of what they're thinking at that point about college or not going to college, I ask each student to take a more in-depth inventory, just because I don't even know all the careers that are out there. There's so many things you could do that you nor your parents nor your school counselor may have thought of.
Therapy.
Exactly. I'm still wondering what that is. So up until this year, things are going to change a little bit for this year's juniors. I've asked students to take an aptitude assessment, and that looks at what their what their abilities really are. You can say, okay, I'm interested in these things, but what are you really good at? That assessment would take students over 2 hours. So the company we worked with decided we're not going to do that assessment anymore. And they've developed a new assessment that I'll be asking our juniors to take this spring prior to their individual meeting with me and their parents. And they're calling it a character assessment. And I'm really excited about it. I was a little bit skeptical because I loved the aptitude test, but my lucky 12-year-old daughter, who gets to be my guinea pig for many things in my...
She doing well on the price calculator?
Oh,
you could teach her how to use it.
You know, she probably has seen me running those before. I asked her if she'd be willing to take it, and just so I could know what it looks like and how the,
you could make
whether
a
the
judgment.
results are any
Yeah.
I need to take all the inventories that I have the students take, just so I know what they'll face. So she had a lot of questions as she went through it about, like, what do you think am I the life of the party, or am I, just kind of your personality and how you interact with others. And so it's looking at how you think, how you engage with others, how you apply yourself, and how you respond in different situations. So it's a different kind of test, but I really liked it. It only takes like 30 to 40 minutes as opposed to the 2 hours, but it gives you a lot more information than the poet therapist. We're not going to stop talking about that.
Yeah.
Interest inventory. So that's really helpful. It gave us then a whole list of careers, which I wouldn't have really thought of probably for her, but when I saw them, I thought these make a lot of sense. And you can then filter, say, well, based on school or education level, I'm willing to do a master's degree or not, or I just want to see what fits my personality based on high school diploma. And you can set up filters based on income level too. Like, I want to make this much, so let's filter for that. And it was really helpful. So I ask all our students to take an in-depth assessment just for conversation when we sit down with their parents. And you can always say, I know these are the careers that were presented. I'm interested in this. You can always choose something else, but at least we have that information and we can talk about it and say, would you ever consider this? This actually could fit you really well. And then students also need to think about their values. Those are, kind of change through different seasons of life, different points of your life. Like where I'm at right now, my biggest career value is flexibility. I need some flexibility in being with my kids and in being at work and setting up the schedule. Some people may, when they're in their 20s, really value travel and they want a job where they can travel the world. I couldn't do that right now.
Sure.
And there's things that later in your career you'll be able to do that you really value. Maybe it's independence. Maybe it's, okay, now I really want to make money. So students often at 16, 17, you don't have a good grasp on what you value in a career because you've not really seen how those things play out. But I like to bring that up with students just to be thinking about that, how your values affect how happy you'll be in your career.
My daughters were going to school during a time when COVID was really impacting colleges. And at some points, it was really challenging even to get on campus to visit. We have some horror stories of colleges asking us to make decisions, and they wanted to just put us in a van and drive us around the campus.
I remember that. Yeah.
And so what's a good way to find a school that's a good fit? And what's a bad way? Or what are some of the mistakes that you see parents and students making as they try to figure out this college is a good fit or not?
So we start that process in the 11th grade year formally with the college seminar class, and students start with taking surveys about themselves. I have them look at how they learn, to think about what kind of an experience they're looking for, and to really think about what's important to them and what they value. And I ask parents to go through that process with their student and read along in the book that we use.
Probably causes some really fun conversations at home.
Yes, and that's the goal, because sometimes we sit down for that meeting after the class, the seminar is concluded, And the student, I say, can you share from page 63 in your workbook where you've compiled the 8 things you have decided you're looking for in a school? And the student will read that, and the parents are sitting there like, what? Like, nope, that's not what we're looking for. So my goal
Think
is
again.
even if it feels like there's some friction there, okay, now you guys are talking about this, and you're saying, and you're able to kind of go back and forth about, well, we value this, well, we are looking for this, and hopefully come to a consensus. Some of that is also just learning the vocabulary of the college search process. And often for families, when it's their first child, that's where they're learning a lot of these things.
Yeah.
What's a liberal arts school versus a polytechnic university? 2 very different experiences. Conservative schools versus more like schools that are known for being more liberal and progressive. What would that look like? We've got all kinds of Christian schools, but what about the ones that have all these rules and say you need to wear a long dress every day, or we're going to make sure you're in your dorm by 11 p.m. So there's all kinds of, even within one category of school, there's a lot of variety. So you need to just have those conversations and talk and make it part of your regular conversation.
With what's going on in our culture, I've seen a shift. We used to have about half going to secular schools and half going to Christian schools. And I think that that percentage has ticked over toward the Christian side of things a little bit more recently. How do you know, what advice would you give for parents whose children are thinking through, this school that might be very, woke, liberal, and this school that might be a Christian school? And sometimes it's really looking at the student in front of you as to what's a good fit. But how do you help parents and students walk through that kind of decision?
Yeah, that's something we definitely talk about too in the college seminar class. And I always challenge students, no matter what they start off thinking. Some have a very strong idea of, I'm only going to apply to Christian schools, and some are saying, I am not going to a Christian college. So my goal is to say,
if you want to watch Alabama every week, it's best to be in Alabama.
That's right. That's right. So my hope and my encouragement to students is to start this process with an open mind and to really consider all the options, have conversations with people who love you and care about you, and just really consider where the Lord might be leading you, because you might think that you have chosen your Christian college and offers might start coming back, and you're starting to think maybe that's not where I am supposed to go next. So I encourage students to be open-minded about it. If you are considering some of those schools that are not Christian schools, then you need to be looking at who will be their community when they arrive on campus. Will they find their people? Will their opinions be respected? Or will they be shunned for saying something that they believe is true and no one else thinks that? So I think that's important to look at the environment on campus.
And even at Christian schools.
Absolutely. Yeah. So is there a community of graciousness on that campus, or might the student not feel like this is a community where they fit in?
Yeah.
So the students, when you're 18 to 22, you're going to face struggles. Something is going to be really hard. And I would encourage parents and students to think about, if you've kind of honed in on a school and you're going to assume that you're going to go through something really hard during those 4 years, do you see people you would turn to talk to about that? And it's nice to have great conversations with peers who are supportive. But one thing, when I look back at my college experience, I wish I had made more connections with adults who have experience and who care about me. I did have some of those conversations. I went to office hours sometimes and always walked away feeling really encouraged and supported, and like I knew what I needed to do with whatever decision I had in front of me. But if you're looking at a quote secular school, like look around, who are the ministers on campus who are doing really good work there? Does your student know how to access them?
And maybe a church that might be
and the
fit.
Church, absolutely.
That was so important to me in college. I went to a Christian college, but just getting outside of that bubble of college for a few hours a week and spending time with people that I didn't have all of those commonalities of age and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's really good.
Yeah. So our students do well on things like the PSAT and the SAT and the CLT, the classical learning test, which I'm really a fan of. But I'm not really sure that those things are always a great way to, to show if someone is college ready. Our culture puts such a premium on these things, but it is the cost of doing business. It used to be the cost of doing business. I guess some schools are going more test optional now. COVID kind of knocked that around a little bit.
Yeah.
But we always encourage our kids to be ready to take those tests. They usually help our kids in their college efforts. Mm-hmm. And we've had parents, and I've actually been a parent on this spectrum at some points. And from the prepare, Hughes 2, so he can start to
right.
Put these blocks together, Hugh.
Do the work, Hugh.
Right. All the way over to what? SAT? That was yesterday? What do you mean? Yeah. So what advice would you give to students and parents as they prepare for these standardized tests?
My advice would be to prepare.
Okay.
I know test optional has gotten a lot of publicity in the last few years, and I would say that 2020 and 2021 school year, test optional was truly a legitimate. It was kind of the only option. The test centers were literally closed. So it was a great option for those students those couple of years. But now I get a little concerned about what it says if a student who sends in a transcript from a classical private school and has all these things on their resume, but they don't send an SAT score in. I get a little concerned about what that looks like. And colleges can say, like, we truly are test optional, we mean it, and some of them do. But I also
and some of them might be using that behind the scenes as a sorting mechanism.
Yeah. Like, I think it's helped a lot of students who come from more disadvantaged situations, who it gives the college more of an opportunity to be able to admit them. Whereas our students, it's hard to say if you went to a private high school that you are disadvantaged. So I think there's a sense in which our students need to send in a score. And we still have students who I do say actually don't send in a score. It depends on the schools they're looking at. So we do still do that sometimes. But the best thing you can do is really prepare and do the best thing you can. And I always recommend, and I tell all our sophomores in their meeting with me and with their parents in the winter, we're not going to do this right now, but when summer rolls around, make yourself a schedule and just, whether it's 30 minutes twice a week or it's an hour, whatever it is, do the work. Many of our students have gotten some recognition from National Merit Scholarship Corporation. That's worth a lot of money.
Exciting.
So if you put in the work, you could get some really nice scholarship offers that will make you look back and say, yeah, that was worth it. So that's completely based on your 11th grade PSAT, that National Merit Scholarship. But regardless, I love to see our students have a test score that really reflects their abilities. So do that work. If you struggle to sit at the computer and go through questions, and you can, maybe my children would say, please don't say that. If I said, ask the grandparents for some money to hire a tutor, they'd say, no, I don't want that for my birthday. Like, don't give me SAT tutoring for my birthday. Well, whatever it takes to, like, if you need a private tutor, like, see if you can get some help.
I would love to see your
we need to erase that.
Your kids' Christmas list. I could go down through them and say, no, that's Rachel. Yeah. That's not. Kitty did not want an SAT
not ask
tutor.
For a tutor for her birthday.
Yeah.
No, they would hate that. But I'm saying whatever it takes, you want your student to go into that test feeling confident and feeling like that score reflects what kind of a student they are and what they're capable of.
So as we're winding this down, if you're a parent and you want to know more about how to do this, how to prepare for college and how to work through these issues with your children, are there some books you would recommend?
So the book we use in our college seminar class is called College Match, A Blueprint for Choosing the Best School for You. And it's literally a workbook to walk you through all aspects of the college process, including those surveys I mentioned, just really thinking about who your student is and what they're looking for in a college community. So I think that's a great book. If you're not a student at Veritas, you might want to get a copy and work through that with your mom and dad. But that kind of covers everything. There used to be some college guidebooks that I really liked. ISI has not come out with a new book in a long time. I'm not sure. I'd be curious, why they don't update their book anymore. And you can spend time reading college guidebooks. There's a lot of information on the internet. Sometimes those things are what actually, I think, in our age of we can get all the information we want instantly at our fingertips, it almost can become overwhelming.
Really?
In a way, right? In a way that back when in the 90s, when we didn't know all the details about what every student thought about every college, you'd, pick 4 or 5 and apply and wait to hear from them, write out your essays. So it's different.
I got William F. Buckley's book to the Guide to the Best Liberal Arts Colleges in America.
Yeah. And there's nothing like that on the market right now. Maybe we need to come up with a new college guidebook.
There we go.
So that's
you have a lot of. You're going to have to cut back on your net calculator score there.
I'm sure I'd work that into the book somehow.
Maybe it'll be an ebook. Well, Rachel, thank you so much for coming in and talking about this important topic. You've been such a blessing to the students and families here, and can already tell you're going to be a blessing to Kitty, Jane, and Hugh.
Thank you.
Whose net scores are probably on the fridge right now. So thank you so much for being part of Cultivate.
Thank you, Ty.
You've been listening to Cultivate, the podcast of Veritas Academy, a preschool through 12th grade classical Christian school in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania. If you'd like to learn more about Veritas, visit veritasacademy.com to discover the truth, beauty, and goodness of classical Christian education.